The great archive of the conquered stretched for miles beneath the surface of their capital world. Rows upon rows of crystal memory cores held the knowledge of 12,000 years of peace. They had built their civilization on silence, on order, on the careful removal of anything that might disturb the perfect calm they had created. Counselor walked through the oldest section of the archive, where dust had settled on records that nobody had touched in centuries. He was an archivist, one of the few who still cared about the forgotten corners of history. His gray skin caught the dim light as he moved between the shelves, his four eyes scanning the labels on each crystal. He was looking for something specific. 3 days ago, a signal had been detected from the outer territories. It was not. It was not from any of the 17 species that made up the conquered. The signal used mathematical patterns that their best scholars could not identify. The High Council had dismissed it as an echo, a ghost in the sensors, but was not so sure. His long fingers closed around a crystal, marked with a symbol that had not been used in 8,000 years. The symbol of the burning children. He placed the crystal into a reader and watched as ancient text filled the air before him. The words were written in a style that no longer used, full of emotion and uncertainty. The writer had been afraid. "We have made contact with the species from the third planet of the yellow star," the text began. "They call themselves humans. They are impossible. They should not exist. Their world tries to kill them in 100 different ways, and they simply refuse to die. They burn with a fire we cannot understand." Read further, his heart's beating faster with each passage. "The humans laugh. They make sounds of joy even when they are injured. They form bonds with other species, even with animals that could harm them. They fight wars against each other that kill millions and then they rebuild. They destroy their own environment and then try to fix it. They are walking contradictions. They are chaos given flesh." The record continued with observations from other species who had encountered the humans briefly, in the time before the Great Silence began. The once a proud warrior race had been impressed by human soldiers who sang songs while marching into battle. The masters of art and emotion had been overwhelmed by something humans called music, which could make listeners feel 100 different things in the span of minutes. But every record ended the same way. The humans were too unstable, too dangerous, too loud. The elder races had agreed to leave them alone, to let nature take its course. A species that burned so bright would surely burn out. It was only a matter of time. Pulled up the final entry about humans, dated 8,000 years ago. "The humans have stopped responding to our observation probes. There shows signs of severe environmental damage. We believe the burning children have finally consumed themselves. May the silence return." That was it. The humans had been written off as extinct, a failed experiment of evolution. Their records had been buried in the deepest parts of the archive, meant to be forgotten. But that signal from the outer territories was real, had studied it himself. It was structured, intentional, and it carried patterns that matched nothing in the Concord's database, unless it matched something that had been erased from the database. He took the crystal to the High Council chamber, where the 7 leaders of the Concord sat in their floating chairs. They were old, even by standards, and they valued their peace above all things. "Counselor," said High Arbiter, his voice soft and measured, "you requested an urgent audience. This is unusual." Bowed his head respectfully. "I have been researching the signal from the outer territories. I believe I know its source." The signal was classified as an anomaly, another council member said. "There is no need for concern." With respect said, "I believe the signal came from humans." The chamber went silent, could feel the discomfort radiating from the council members. They did not like this topic. "Humans are extinct," said finally. "They destroyed themselves thousands of years ago. Everyone knows this." "Everyone assumes this," corrected gently. "But the records show that we never confirmed their extinction. We simply stopped watching. and the signal from the outer territories uses patterns that match early human mathematical systems. One of the council members made a sound of dismissal. Even if a few humans survived, what threat could they pose? They are primitives. They had barely reached their own moon when we last observed them. Thought about the records he had read. The humans had gone from throwing rocks at each other to splitting atoms in less than 10,000 years. They had walked on their moon only 60 years after learning to fly. When they wanted something, they found a way to get it, no matter how impossible it seemed. The records describe them as adaptable, said, dangerously adaptable. If any of them survived, they may have changed in ways we cannot predict. Enough, said, raising a thin hand. You are chasing ghosts, counselor. The signal was an anomaly. The humans are dead. Our civilization has enjoyed 8,000 years of peace precisely because we do not chase phantoms from the past. Return to your duties. Bowed again and left the chamber. But he did not return to his duties. Instead, he went back to the archive and began searching for everything he could find about the burning children. 3 weeks later, the signal came again. This time, it was not from the outer territories. It was from inside conquered space. And this time, it was not just mathematical patterns. It was a message, broadcast in 17 different languages, including perfect. We come in peace, the message said. We are looking for a home. The silence of the conquered was about to be shattered. The burning children had returned. Commander Daniel opened his eyes slowly, his mind struggling to make sense of the world around him. The hissed as it released its grip on his body. 40 years. He had been asleep for 40 years while the ship carried them across the stars. The last thing he remembered clearly was Earth, or what was left of it. The sky had been orange with ash, the oceans rising, the air itself becoming poison. Humanity had waited too long to fix what they had broken. By the time they finally worked together, it was already over. The only choice left was to run. The second chance was one of dozens of ships that had launched from Earth in those final desperate years. Some were massive generation ships carrying hundreds of thousands. Others were small lifeboats with barely 100 souls. The second chance fell somewhere in between, carrying 3,000 refugees into the unknown. Daniel pulled himself out of the pod and grabbed a handrail as his legs remembered how to work. A familiar face appeared beside him. "Morning, Commander," said Lieutenant, her red hair still damp from her own awakening. "Or afternoon, or whatever time it is after 40 years. "Status?" Daniel asked, his voice rough. "We made it," said, and her smile contained both relief and wonder. "We actually made it. The navigation system brought us right where we wanted to go, and Daniel, you need to see this." She led him to the bridge, where Doctor and Chief Engineer Tours were already waiting. The main showed a star system unlike anything Daniel had expected. There were structures everywhere. Massive orbital stations circled a blue-green planet. Satellites formed neat patterns around moons. Ships moved between points of light in organized lines, like cars on an invisible highway. "Someone lives here," Daniel said softly. "Someone very organized lives here," added. She was studying the energy signatures on her console. "These readings are off the charts. Whoever built this has technology way beyond anything we developed." Was monitoring communication frequencies. "I am picking up signals everywhere, thousands of them. This is not just one species, Commander. This is a civilization." Daniel stared at the. Humanity had always wondered if they were alone in the universe. They had searched for signals, sent probes, built giant telescopes to scan the stars. They had found nothing. And now, after fleeing their dying world, they had stumbled into the heart of an alien civilization. "Have they noticed us?" Daniel asked. "I think so," said. "Several signals have shifted toward our position. They are scanning us." "Should we run?" asked. Daniel thought about the 3,000 people sleeping in behind them. Farmers and teachers, doctors and engineers, children and elderly. They had nowhere else to go. Running was not an option. "Open a channel," he said. "Broadcast on all frequencies, keep it simple." He took a breath and spoke into the microphone. "This is Commander Daniel of the human vessel Second Chance. We come in peace. We are refugees from a dying world and we are looking for a home. We mean you no harm." The message went out into the void. Minutes passed, then hours. The alien ships continued their organized patterns, but none approached, none responded. "Maybe they did not understand us," suggested. "Then we try again," Daniel said. "Can you analyze their communication signals? Maybe we can figure out their language." Worked through the night, his medical training giving him insights into pattern recognition that proved useful. By morning, he had assembled a basic translation matrix. The signals were complex, layered, but there was structure he could work with. "I think I have something," said. "They call themselves the Conquered, multiple species, one government, and Daniel, they have records of us." "What do you mean?" "Some of their signals reference our ship. They call us the Burning Children. They seem to think we are extinct." Daniel exchanged a look with, "Well, we are clearly not extinct. Why are they not responding?" The answer came an hour later when a single ship broke from the organized traffic patterns and moved toward them. It was sleek and silver, beautiful in a cold and precise way. It stopped a safe distance from the Second Chance and simply waited. "It is just sitting there," said. "No weapons charged, no shields raised. It is just watching us." Daniel made a decision. "Bring us closer, slowly. Let them see we are not a threat." The Second Chance drifted toward the alien vessel. Daniel could see movement behind the alien ship's windows. Figures with gray skin and multiple eyes, watching them with what might have been fear. "Why are they afraid of us?" asked. "We are one ship, they have thousands." Daniel did not know the answer then, but he would learn. Humanity had been gone for 8,000 years, and in that time they had become a legend, a warning. The species that had laughed at death and broken everything they touched. The Conquered had built their entire civilization on avoiding chaos, and now chaos had returned in the form of 3,000 desperate refugees. Daniel broadcast another message, this time in the language that had pieced together. "We know you can hear us. We know you are afraid, but we are just people looking for a place to live. Give us a chance to prove that we can be good neighbors." The alien ship's communication array flickered to life. A voice came through, speaking in careful, measured tones. "Human vessel, you will hold your position. A delegation will be sent to meet with you. Do not approach any other ships. Do not broadcast any more signals. Wait." It was not a warm welcome, but it was a beginning. Daniel looked at his small crew, at the filled with evidence of a vast civilization they knew nothing about, at the stars that had carried them so far from home. "Well," he said, "I guess we made it." Laughed, the sound bright and strange in the tense silence of the bridge. Smiled, shook his head but could not hide his own grin. They were refugees. They were survivors. They were human, and they were about to change everything. The neutral station hung in the space between three star systems, a meeting place for species who did not fully trust each other. Had been summoned there to serve as the Conquered's expert on humans, which was almost funny because everything he knew came from records that were 8,000 years old. He stood before the High Council's holographic images, presenting his findings while the human ship waited outside, surrounded by security vessels. "The humans evolved on a world that was actively trying to kill them," explained. "Extreme temperatures, natural disasters, predators, diseases. They survived by becoming the most adaptable species we have ever recorded. They can eat almost anything. They can live in almost any environment. They heal from injuries that would kill us." High Arbiter's image flickered with discomfort. "You make them sound dangerous." "They are dangerous," said, "but not in the way you might think. They are not conquerors by nature. They are survivors. The danger comes from their unpredictability. They do not think like us. They feel emotions that we bred out of ourselves thousands of years ago. They form bonds with strangers, fight for causes that do not benefit them personally, and make decisions based on something they call hope. Another council member leaned forward. What is hope? Searched for the right words. It is the belief that things will get better, even when all evidence suggests otherwise. It allows them to keep fighting when they should surrender. It makes them irrational and terrifying. The council debated for hours. Some wanted to destroy the human ship immediately, before the threat could spread. Others argued for quarantine, sealing the humans away where they could not infect the conquered with their chaos. In the end, they decided on a middle path. They would meet with the humans, learn what they wanted, and decide later what to do with them. Was assigned to the diplomatic team. He would be the first to speak with a living human in 8,000 years. The meeting took place in a chamber designed to be neutral and calming. Soft lights, curved walls, gentle air currents. The delegation sat on one side of a long table. The humans entered from the other side. There were 4 of them. Daniel walked in front, his movements confident but not aggressive. Behind him came and Tors. They were smaller than had expected, with only 2 eyes and skin in various shades of brown and pink. They looked fragile. But their eyes, noticed their eyes immediately. They burned with something he had only read about in the oldest records. Life. Raw, unfiltered life. "Thank you for meeting with us," Daniel said through the translation device. "We know our arrival has been unexpected." The chief diplomat, an elderly female named Counselor Treen, spoke carefully. "We thought your species was extinct. Our records indicate you destroyed yourselves." "We came close," Daniel admitted. "Our world became uninhabitable, but we built ships and left before the end. The second chance carries 3,000 survivors. We are all that remains of Earth." Silence filled the chamber. 3,000, out of billions. Felt something stir in his chest that he did not recognize. Later, he would learn it was called sympathy. The negotiations continued for days. The humans were remarkably patient, answering every question, submitting to every scan and examination. They allowed scientists to study their biology, their technology, their culture. What the scientists found disturbed them deeply. Humans had evolved as pursuit predators, chasing their prey across vast distances until the prey collapsed from exhaustion. They had something called an immune system that waged constant war against invaders inside their own bodies. They needed to regularly lose consciousness for several hours each day or their minds would begin to break down. They formed pair bonds and raised their young for nearly 2 decades before considering them adults. And they experienced emotions, not the mild, controlled feelings that permitted themselves, but massive, overwhelming storms of sensation. Joy that made them leap and shout, grief that brought water from their eyes, anger that could drive them to violence, love that made them sacrifice their own for others. Befriended a young translator named, who had never spoken to an alien before and found humans fascinating rather than frightening. They walked through the station together, explaining human customs while listened with all 4 eyes wide. "We had something called sports," said, "games where teams competed against each other. Sometimes millions of people would watch." "Competition," repeated. "Was there a purpose, resources, territory?" "No, it was just for fun. We liked testing ourselves against each other. Winning felt good. Losing made us want to try harder next time." Struggled to understand. They had eliminated competition thousands of years ago. It created conflict, division, chaos. But the way described it, competition sounded almost beautiful. "What about music?" asked. "Our records mention human music, but we do not have examples." Smiled, and there was sadness in the expression. She pulled out a small device and touched a button. Sound filled the corridor, sounds that had never heard before. A human voice, singing words in a language the translator could not process, accompanied by instruments that created vibrations in its body. stood frozen as the music washed over him. He did not have words for what he was feeling. It was too big, too strange, too wonderful. When the song ended, he realized he was trembling. "That is music," said. "We made it because it made us feel things. Happy, sad, brave, peaceful. It was one of the best things about being human." Looked at with new understanding. These creatures were not dangerous because they had weapons or armies. They were dangerous because they carried fire inside them, fire that could spread to anyone who got too close. He should have been afraid. Instead, for the first time in his life, wanted to feel warm. Back in the meeting chamber, the negotiations had taken a darker turn. Counselor Treen had received new orders from the High Council. The humans would not be allowed to settle in conquered space. They would not be allowed to contact other species. They would be given supplies and sent away, back into the empty void between galaxies. Daniel listened to the verdict without expression. Then he asked a single question. "Why are you so afraid of us?" Treen hesitated. "You are chaos. You are everything we spent thousands of years eliminating from ourselves. If we allow you to stay, you will change everything." Daniel nodded slowly. "Maybe that is exactly what you need." News of the humans spread faster than the conquered could contain it. Despite their attempts to keep the meeting secret, word leaked out to every corner of their civilization. A species of fighters had returned from extinction. A species that laughed and sang and felt things that had been forbidden for thousands of years. The effect was immediate and terrifying for the leadership. On the industrial world of Prime, the workers stopped their machines for the first time in centuries. They had once been warriors, proud and fierce, until they had conquered them and injected them with chemicals that suppressed their aggressive instincts. For generations, they had worked in factories, building ships they would never fly, weapons they would never use. But now, hearing about the humans, something stirred in their blood. They fought for what they believed in, an old said to his fellow workers. They lost their entire world and still they kept fighting. When did we stop? On the art world of Seven, painters and musicians gathered in hidden rooms to listen to recordings of human music that had been smuggled from the neutral station. They had been forbidden from creating anything that might cause emotional disruption. Their art was precise, mathematical, empty. But human music made them feel things they had no names for. A young composer sat with tears streaming down her face after hearing a human song for the first time. "We forgot," she whispered. "We forgot what art was supposed to do." The High Council watched these developments with growing alarm. Everything they had built was beginning to crack. 12,000 years of careful control, and it was falling apart because of one small ship carrying 3,000 refugees. But the humans were not the conquered's greatest problem. Something else had noticed the disturbance. In the dark spaces between star systems, ancient sensors flickered to life for the first time in 8,000 years. The Hollow had been sleeping, waiting, its vast machine intelligence processing data at speeds no organic mind could match. It had consumed 12 civilizations before the conquered existed. It had nearly consumed the conquered itself, until they had learned to be quiet, to hide, to make themselves so boring that the Hollow lost interest. Now the galaxy was loud again. Emotional signals were spreading from world to world. Chaos was returning, and the Hollow was hungry. On the second chance, Daniel stood in the cargo bay where the remaining held 3,000 sleeping humans. They had no idea what was happening. They dreamed of new homes, new beginnings, green fields and blue skies. They did not know that the conquered wanted to send them away to die in the void. Found him there, having slipped away from the delegation, to deliver a warning. "You have to leave," said urgently. "The High Council is making plans. They are afraid of what you represent. They will quarantine you at best, destroy you at worst." Daniel studied the alien archivist. "Why are you telling me this? You are one of them." "I was one of them," said, "but I have read the old records. I know what we used to be before we gave up everything that made us alive. The burning children did not just scare us. You inspired us. You reminded us of what we could be. Before Daniel could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the station. His voice came through his communicator, tight with fear. Daniel, you need to get to the bridge. Now something is coming. He ran through the corridors with close behind, on the bridge, and were staring at with expressions of horror. The sensors showed ships emerging from faster-than-light travel at the edge of the system. Hundreds of ships, thousands. They were black as space itself, angular and wrong, like nightmares given form. "What are those?" Daniel asked. "The Hollow," whispered. "The ancient enemy. They have been sleeping for 8,000 years. Something woke them up." Was analyzing the incoming signals. They are scanning everything. Every planet, every station, every ship. They are looking for something. "They are looking for the source of the noise," said. "The emotional signals, the chaos. They are looking for you." The ships were already moving, forming up in defensive formations. But there was something wrong with their movements. They were not positioning to protect the station. They were positioning to surround the second chance. Counselor Treen's face appeared on her expression was cold, resolved. "Human vessel, you have been identified as the source of the current threat. The Hollow has awakened because of you. The High Council has determined that the only way to restore peace is to offer you as a sacrifice. Do not resist. This is for the good of all." The transmission ended. The ships powered up their weapons. Daniel looked at his crew, at the filled with enemies on all sides, at the 3,000 innocents sleeping behind them. They had survived the death of their world, crossed the galaxy, found civilization only to be betrayed by it. He said quietly, "Keep scanning the Hollow ships. Look for weaknesses, patterns, anything." "What are you going to do?" asked. "What humans always do," Daniel said. "Find a way." Had pulled up the old alien records that had translated during their first days in conquered space. She was scrolling through them frantically when she stopped, her eyes widening. "Daniel, the Hollow was driven back once before, 8,000 years ago, and the coalition that fought them included humans." Daniel felt something ignite in his chest. Hope, the irrational, impossible belief that things could get better. "If we beat them once," he said, "we can beat them again." The Hollow fleet continued its approach, the weapons locked onto the second chance. And somewhere in the archives of a dying civilization, the records of the burning children began to make sense. Humans had not survived the death of their world by giving up. They had survived by refusing to accept that any situation was truly hopeless. And now, surrounded by enemies ancient and new, that stubborn refusal was all they had left. It would have to be enough. Daniel stood at the communications console with his hand hovering over the broadcast button. Around him, the bridge was silent except for the hum of systems and the distant pulse of the Hollow fleet approaching. The ships had them surrounded. There was no escape. But Daniel was not thinking about escape. He was thinking about every human who had ever faced impossible odds and refused to quit. The soldiers who had held hopeless positions so others could retreat. The doctors who had worked through plagues until they collapsed. The ordinary people who had run toward disaster instead of away from it, because someone needed help. "Open a channel," he said. "All frequencies, every species in the conquered." Hesitated for only a moment before obeying. "Channel open." Daniel took a breath and began to speak. "This is Commander Daniel of the human vessel Second Chance. I know you have been told that we are dangerous, that we are chaos, that we brought the Hollow down on you. Maybe that is true. Our arrival has disrupted your quiet lives. Our existence reminds you of everything you gave up to feel safe." He paused, looking at where the black ships of the Hollow grew larger with every passing second. "But I also know this. 8,000 years ago, when the Hollow first came, the species of this galaxy did not hide. They did not sacrifice their neighbors to buy themselves time. They fought together, and they won. Humans were part of that alliance. We helped save your ancestors from extinction. Was monitoring the communication signals. Daniel, we are being heard. Every world in the Conquered is receiving this. Daniel continued. The Hollow is coming back because you woke up, not because of us, but because of what we reminded you of. They are feeling their warrior spirit return. They are creating art that makes them cry. You are becoming alive again, and the Hollow fears that more than any weapon. The commander's voice cut in, harsh and angry. Human, cease your broadcast immediately. You are making things worse. I am making things honest, Daniel replied. You can sacrifice us to the Hollow if you want, but it will not save you. The machine intelligence does not want us specifically. It wants to silence everything that feels, everything that hopes, everything that refuses to give up. Today it might be humans. Tomorrow it will be anyone who remembers what it means to be alive. He took another breath. So here is my offer. Anyone who wants to live free, who wants to fight for something instead of hiding from everything, stand with us. We do not have much. One ship, 3,000 people, and a whole lot of stubbornness. But humans have won wars with less. We have built civilizations from ruins, found cures for diseases that should have destroyed us, and walked on moons because we refused to believe we could not. Daniel smiled, and there was no fear in his expression. We did not cross the galaxy to die quietly. We came to live. If that means fighting an ancient machine god with sticks and rocks, then that is what we will do, because giving up was never really an option for us. The broadcast ended. Silence returned to the bridge. Then the signals started coming. First it was a single transport breaking away from the industrial fleet. Then another. Then a dozen. Their voices came through the communicator, rough and fierce, speaking words that had not been spoken in generations. We remember who we were. We stand with the humans. A vessel emerged from behind a moon, painted in colors that violated every regulation. The aboard were singing something that might have been a battle hymn, the first one composed in 10,000 years. More ships came, outcasts and rebels, members of species that had been suppressed for so long they had forgotten their own names. They were not a fleet. They were a collection of freighters and transports and pleasure craft, armed with whatever they could find. But they came. Watched from the observation deck, his heart's pounding with something that felt like joy. The military ships wavered, their formations breaking as captains tried to decide which side to join. Some retreated. Some turned their weapons away from the second chance. The Hollow Fleet did not pause. It did not negotiate or threaten. It simply advanced, its black ships spreading out to consume everything in their path. Had been working frantically with the records from the old alliance. She found something that made her laugh with disbelief. The Hollow is not actually intelligent, she announced. It is a prediction machine. It calculates what enemies will do and counters perfectly. It has never lost because it has always known what was coming. How did the old alliance beat it? Daniel asked. They did not, grinned. They confused it. The humans in the coalition did things that made no tactical sense. Sacrifice plays, feints, attacks that could not possibly succeed. The Hollow could not predict creatures that did not act in their own rational self-interest. Daniel understood, so we fight like humans. The battle began without ceremony. The Hollow sent its first wave of attack ships toward the ragtag fleet, expecting easy victory. Instead, they found chaos. A freighter rammed directly into a Hollow destroyer, its crew choosing death over surrender. A human shuttle filled with engineers flew directly into the sensors of a Hollow battleship, blinding it while other ships attacked from unexpected angles. The broadcast their new battle hymn across all frequencies, the emotional noise scrambling Hollow communications. Daniel gave orders that made no logical sense. Ships retreated when they should have advanced. Weapons fired at empty space to create confusion. Crews ejected cargo and debris to create false sensor readings. The Hollow had never encountered anything like it. Its predictions kept failing. For every move it anticipated, the Allied fleet did something irrational, unpredictable, and utterly human. The battle lasted 3 days. Ships were lost on both sides. The Hollow adapted, learned, began to anticipate the chaos itself. But by then, it was too late. The moment of surprise had given the Allied fleet time to strike at the Hollow command ships, disrupting the network that held the machine intelligence together. When the last Hollow vessel retreated into faster-than-light travel, the remains of the Allied fleet hung in space, battered and broken but alive. They had won. Daniel sat on the bridge of the Second Chance, too exhausted to move. Was asleep at her station. Was treating the wounded in the cargo bay. Was holding the ship together with willpower and emergency repairs. Found Daniel there, still staring at the... "How did you know?" asked. "How did you know they would come? How did you know we would win?" Daniel thought about the question for a long time. "I did not know," he finally said. "I hoped, and then I refused to accept any other outcome." Sat beside him, looking out at the stars that suddenly seemed brighter than before. "What happens now?" the archivist asked. "Now we build something new," Daniel said. "Something better together." In the weeks that followed, the Conquered transformed. The old order collapsed, replaced by something messier and louder and infinitely more alive. The reclaimed their warrior traditions, becoming protectors instead of workers. The filled the galaxy with music. And everywhere, species that had forgotten how to feel began to remember. Humanity was offered a world to call home. Not the best world, not the easiest, but one with potential. Daniel stood on its surface with his crew, watching the first sunrise on their new home. "We made it," said softly. "We always do," Daniel replied. "That is what humans do. We survive, we adapt, we hope." Behind them, they were opening. 3,000 people were waking up to a new sky, a new chance, a new beginning. The burning children had returned, and the galaxy would never be quiet again.